The church fell silent the moment I picked up the funeral program. My fingers froze before I even reached the second page. Under the section titled, "In Loving Memory of Our Family," there was a list of names. My late husband's parents were there. His grandparents were there. And then I saw it. Beloved wife, Helen Brooks, 1958 to 2024. I stared at the page in disbelief. I was standing in the church holding my own husband's funeral program. And according to it, I had been dead for almost a year. I slowly looked around the room. Not a single person seemed surprised. Several guests even smiled sadly at me, believing I was simply an old family friend. My name is Helen Brooks, and the day I attended my husband's funeral was the day I discovered he had erased me from his life long before he ever died. Richard and I had been married for 31 years. Like most couples, we had good years and difficult ones, but I never imagined he had been planning to remove me from his story. About 18 months before his death, Richard suddenly became distant. He claimed he needed space after retiring and rented a small apartment across town to focus on writing a book. He insisted it wasn't about another woman. "I just need to figure out who I am," he kept saying. I didn't believe him completely, but after decades together, I chose to respect his wishes. We never divorced. We simply lived separately while staying legally married. We still spoke every week, shared holiday dinners with our children, and even celebrated our anniversary quietly over coffee. That's why receiving a phone call from my son telling me Richard had suffered a fatal heart attack shocked me beyond words. I arrived at the funeral believing I was coming to say goodbye to the man I had loved for more than half my life. Instead, I found out someone had already said goodbye to me. Confused, I walked toward my daughter, Emily, and showed her the program. She looked at it, then looked at me with complete disbelief. "Mom, who approved this?" she whispered. Neither of us knew. After the service ended, guests gathered in the reception hall. I noticed a woman about my age greeting everyone as if she were the hostess. People hugged her, offered condolences, and repeatedly called her Richard's wife. My heart sank. She wasn't wearing a wedding ring, but she stood exactly where I had always stood at family events. Finally, she approached me politely. "You must be Helen," she said quietly. I nodded. "I'm Diane." Before I could ask anything else, she lowered her eyes. "I didn't know he never divorced you." Those words changed everything. Diane explained they had met nearly a year earlier at a volunteer charity event. Richard told her he had been widowed and had spent the last year learning how to live alone after losing his beloved wife to cancer. He even showed her the same funeral program draft he had created months earlier while planning his memorial wishes. According to everything he told her, I had already died. Diane had no reason to doubt him. She introduced him to her family, cared for him during his final illness, and genuinely believed she was honoring the memory of the woman he claimed to have lost. My anger disappeared almost instantly. Diane wasn't the villain. She had been living inside the same lie as everyone else. Together we searched through the memorial display Richard had prepared before his death. Hidden inside one folder was a sealed envelope labeled, "For my family." Our children opened it that evening. We expected an apology. Instead, Richard admitted he had invented my death because he couldn't bear telling people his marriage had fallen apart. He wrote that pretending to be a grieving widower earned him sympathy instead of uncomfortable questions. The lie became easier to maintain than the truth. What began as a single dishonest conversation eventually became an entirely fictional life. He apologized for hurting everyone but claimed he had run out of courage to correct the story. Reading those words felt heavier than the funeral itself. My children were devastated. Diane cried harder than anyone. She realized the relationship she believed was built on honesty had been founded on a lie she never asked to be part of. A few days later, while sorting through Richard's apartment, we found dozens of journals. They revealed a lonely man terrified of disappointing people. Instead of facing difficult conversations, he created easier stories. Those stories slowly became his reality until he no longer knew how to escape them. The greatest surprise came a month later when Richard's attorney contacted me. Despite everything, he had never changed his legal documents. His will, retirement accounts, and insurance policies all still listed me as his lawful wife and primary beneficiary. Diane wasn't mentioned once. Not because Richard didn't care about her, but because he never found the courage to untangle the life he had created. After long conversations with my children, I made a decision that shocked everyone. I voluntarily shared part of the insurance money with Diane. She refused at first, insisting she didn't deserve it. I smiled gently and told her, "This isn't because Richard loved one of us more than the other. It's because he lied to both of us." We eventually became unlikely friends, bonded not by betrayal but by survival. Today, whenever I think about Richard, I don't remember the man who wrote my name into a funeral program before I had even died. I remember the frightened husband who spent years hiding behind stories instead of facing the truth. His greatest mistake wasn't loving someone else. It was believing that one lie could protect everyone he cared about. It never could. Every year on the anniversary of his funeral, I visit his grave with fresh flowers. Sometimes Diane joins me. We stand there in silence, two women whose lives crossed because of one man's fear. Before leaving, I always smile at the simple headstone and quietly whisper the lesson Richard taught us all far too late: the truth may hurt for a moment, but a lie can bury the living long before anyone dies.